When the Las Vegas Raiders schedule was first released, I was really looking forward to their Monday Night Football game against the Atlanta Falcons. It seemed like a winnable game. And with the Raiders possibly in the playoff race, depending on how the offense performed, this game had a lot of potential. However, fast forward to now, and the situation has completely changed. This game doesn't have much significance for the Raiders anymore. On top of that, it's a home game, but about 50% of the seats have been sold to Falcons fans. And that doesn't even account for the secondary market, where more tickets could be sold. The Raiders are in an interesting spot right now, especially with the upcoming game against the Falcons. It's possible we might see the Falcons make a quarterback change during the game, or even right before it starts. Michael Penix Jr., a player the Raiders were really interested in, might end up starting for Atlanta. But before we dive into that, let's talk about some Raiders players who are returning from injury. Nate Hobbs, for example, has been practicing this week after being sidelined for about 3 to 4 weeks with an injury. His absence has definitely affected the defense, even though they've still managed to perform well. Hobbs is a fantastic slot defender. He's strong, he tackles well, and he can cover tight ends. Getting him back is huge for the Raiders, and head coach Antonio Pierce is expecting Hobbs to start against the Falcons on Monday. This is great news because Hobbs is in a contract year, and if he continues to play at a high level, he could earn a new contract with the Raiders. His role as a slot defender is key to the team's success. Now, another player whose status is up in the air is Aiden O'Connell. He was knocked out of the game last week, but the injury wasn't as bad as initially feared. However, O'Connell has not practiced, and it's unlikely he'll play against the Falcons. The Raiders might be using this to their advantage, forcing Atlanta to prepare for both him and Desmond Ridder, the Falcons' current quarterback. Ridder is a different type of player, quicker, and more likely to take off running, unlike O'Connell, who is more of a pocket passer. Although it seems O'Connell won't play, the Raiders are making the Falcons prepare for all possibilities. To add another layer of intrigue, the Raiders recently signed a new quarterback. With O'Connell likely out, the team will have 3 quarterbacks for the game: Desmond Ridder, Carter Bradley as the backup, and the newly signed quarterback from the Panthers practice squad, who will serve as the third-string option in case of an emergency. This game might not hold playoff implications for the Raiders, but it's still going to be interesting. The Falcons are trying to stay in the playoff hunt, and while they're a good team, they've had their struggles this season. After firing head coach Arthur Smith, Raheem Morris took over as the Falcons' head coach. It's a new chapter for Atlanta, and the Raiders will need to stay focused if they want to finish strong. After Arthur Smith was let go, Raheem Morris took over as head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. They also hired Zach Robinson as their new offensive coordinator. Robinson was someone the Raiders had considered for their own offensive coordinator position before they hired Luke Getsy. However, in my opinion, Robinson hasn't done an outstanding job so far. The Falcons have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but Robinson's offensive strategy has seemed at odds with how that line was built. Over the past few years, the Falcons focused on creating a fast and nimble offensive line, with players weighing around 280, 285 pounds. These linemen were perfect for executing zone runs, which made their offense difficult to stop. But under Robinson, there has been more of a push to throw the ball, and some believe this shift is why the Falcons have been less effective. While I'm not entirely sure I agree with that criticism, it's clear that the Falcons' offense is stacked with talent. Take the individual players, for example. Kyle Pitts, physically one of the best tight ends, hasn't quite lived up to his potential. Drake London is a strong wide receiver, and even their lesser-known players like Darnell Mooney and Ray McCloud can make plays when needed. The offensive line is also solid, with Chris Lindstrom being one of the best guards in the NFL, and Jake Matthews and Matthew Bergeron, their tackles, are key players. They also have Bijan Robinson, who many consider the best running back in the NFL. Despite all this talent, the The Falcons haven't been able to put everything together. Some people blame Kirk Cousins for their struggles, but now there's speculation that Michael Penix Jr. might step in as quarterback. If this happens, it could be a game changer for the Falcons. Penix brings a different style of play, being more mobile and willing to take off running. So even though the Raiders are preparing for Aiden O'Connell, they'll also need to be ready for Penix, who could bring a whole new dynamic to Atlanta's offense. On the Raiders' side, they'll need to focus on their offensive game plan if they want to show improvement and compete in this matchup against the Falcons. Before diving into what the Raiders need to do offensively, I'd like to share a quick reminder about a platform I enjoy using: Underdog. If you've never used it before, there's a link in the comments where you can check out their Pick'em game. It's a fun way to make predictions across the NFL, and with my picks this week, I'm feeling confident about some matchups. For example, I think HN will score at least one touchdown, either rushing or receiving. Brock Bowers should get over 63.5 yards, and Alexander Mattison might run for a touchdown, especially if Desmond Ridder is in at quarterback. I believe Desmond Ridder will start for the Falcons in their upcoming game. With him at quarterback, we're likely to see a lot of read option plays, especially in the red zone. In situations like these, the defensive end will need to maintain proper positioning and not crash down too early, opening up lanes for the quarterback to either throw or take off running. Ridder's mobility is an asset, and with Alexander Mattison behind him, a strong running back who's eager to prove himself, I wouldn't be surprised if he finds the end zone for a rushing touchdown. As for the game, if you're looking for some fun with your football knowledge, there's a $10 entry pick on Underdog with a potential payout of $935. One of the picks I've made involves Jake Hanner, the New Orleans Saints quarterback. He's making his first official start, and while the speed of the game will be a lot faster for him, rookie quarterbacks often make plays on the run, especially if things get confusing. With Dan Quinn's defensive schemes, including blitzing and man coverage, Hanner might be forced to scramble in the red zone, which could lead to a rushing touchdown. It's a high-risk pick, but if it hits, the payout is massive. If you want to make your own picks on Underdog, check the link in the comments below, which also supports the channel. A few of you have tagged me on Twitter with your picks, and I've been able to chat with some of you about strategies. One strategy shared with me recently has made a lot of sense, and I'm planning to try it this week, so we'll see if it works out. Now let's talk about the Raiders on the offensive side. I'm eager to see Carter Bradley get a shot, but I don't think this will be the week for him. If Aiden O'Connell can't go, we're likely going to see Desmond Ridder fired up for his game, especially considering his history with the Raiders. If Ridder goes down during the game, it could open the door for Carter Bradley to step in, and this might actually be a positive for the Raiders long term. Bradley could have an opportunity to play, and just like how Brock Purdy stepped in for the 49 ERs and proved himself, Bradley could do the same for the Raiders. We've already seen some flashes from Bradley in the preseason, and I'm curious to see what he can do in a real game, even if it's just for a couple of snaps or drives. Keep an eye on him as the season progresses. His time might come soon. If Desmond Ridder struggles in the game and the Falcons are still stuck with 0 or 3 points going into the fourth quarter, it might be time to make a change and see if someone else can spark the offense. I think it's crucial to also focus on the right tackle, DJ Glaze, who really needs to prove himself. This week, the Raiders face some solid pass rushers, including Arnold Eddy and Matthew Judon, so it's an important test for Glaze and the entire offensive line. DJ Glaze has been hyped as the future of the Raiders line, and many people have praised GM Tom Telesco for finding 3 starters with his first 3 picks. While I do think Telesco did a great job with the first 2 picks, I'm not fully convinced about Glaze just yet. I need to see him perform consistently against top-tier competition, especially without extra help in pass protection. This game is a good opportunity for Glaze to show that he's worthy of being that future cornerstone. Another key matchup to watch is Grady Jarrett, who's a strong pass rusher, going up against Jackson Powell Johnson. This is a matchup worth keeping an eye on as well. On the offensive side, the Raiders will need to show they can run the ball effectively, and Sincere McCormick has the chance to continue his success. I recently did a breakdown of McCormick's film, where I noticed a lot of power runs and counters, but not much zone running. I want to see more of that zone running, especially outside zone or pin-pull concepts, which tend to create bigger gains. McCormick has the potential to be effective in those plays, so this game will be a good test for him. On the defensive side, I'm looking forward to seeing what Amari Burney can do this week. He had a sack last week, and I think he deserves more playing time. Another player to keep an eye on is Cameron Richardson, who's been improving over the last few weeks. I'm curious to see if he can continue to develop and improve. Patrick Graham has been running a solid scheme with the Raiders secondary, and while individual cornerbacks like Jordan Bennett have shown success, it's important to remember that it's not guaranteed they'd perform just as well on another team. That's often been the case for the Raiders in the past, where corners would come in and struggle despite being successful elsewhere. The key difference is the coaching and the defensive scheme, and Patrick Graham has done well to get the best out of his cornerbacks. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more videos. I'll see you next time.